Welcome to this week's episode. In this one, guest host Mike Dempsey and I have a conversation with John Stallone. John comes from a military family. His grandfather served in World War II, and his dad and his uncle served in Vietnam. So enlisting in the military was a no-brainer for him. He joined the U.S. Air Force at 18. From 1998 to 2002, he served as a security forces member and was deployed 4 times in support of Operation Southern Watch and Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. In 2002, at the age of 22, he joined the Alaska Air National Guard. After he left the Guard in 2009, he took a number of jobs where he was in a position to promote and encourage safety, namely as a safety officer for OSHA and a bouncer in downtown Anchorage. The common thread that links these jobs is John's sense of duty. He says that one of the core values of the Air Force is service before self, which is something he continues to live by. Okay, time to give the Crude Company men a shout out. These are the people who have subscribed to the Crude Patreon for $50 or more. Trina Duber, Seward Brewing Company, The Grind Coffee Shop in Juneau, Derek Adolph, Blue and Gold Board Shop, Sharon Liska, and Alaska Surf Adventure. Thank you to all the Patreon subscribers. This podcast wouldn't be possible without you. If you subscribe to the Crude Magazine Patreon, thank you. Your money helps keep these conversations going. So if you enjoy these conversations, you can subscribe at www.patreon.com/crudemagazine. That's patreon.com/crudemagazine. And pick the subscription tier that works for you. Okay, back to John Stallone. For a good portion of this conversation, John talks about his struggle with depression and PTSD. He talks about the psychological aftermath of spending 8 months in active war zones. How it was a continuous evolution of hurry up and get ready, or hurry up and get used to this. But by the time you acclimated to that environment, it was time to go home. And then once you were home, you were forced to deal with everything you had been through, among civilians who have no frame of reference for war. In 2011, everything kind of came to a head, and John had a mental breakdown. He called the Veterans Crisis Line, and they helped him work through it, and also directed him to local mental health resources. If you or someone you know is struggling with depression, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline and Veterans Crisis Line is 1-800-273-8255. So let's get into this one. Here he is, John Stallone. This red light right here, it means we're recording.
Okay, fired up.
Crude conversations. Listen more than you talk.
Go to work.
John, we were talking about how we met each other, and it's funny that you brought that up, how you met me, because my first question on here was, long before I was aware of your military service, I knew you as a bouncer at bars in downtown Anchorage.
Absolutely.
What got you into that?
Well, it was funny. Growing up here, I had a lot of friends that I grew up in the same, different churches, and I went to Our Lady of Guadalupe and grew up in the Catholic Church. And when I moved back here from active duty, I grew up in the same Catholic Church with a lot of the guys that worked at the Pioneer Bar. So when I got back and I started hanging out and going out with friends and kind of seeing what the nightlife was, because I really hadn't spent a whole lot of time back in Anchorage. It's over 21, so I come back, I'm 23. Mike Ward, Dave Crawford, these guys are at the Pioneer. And summer of 2003 is when I came on the scene, and I don't know, man. I really loved not having any idea what the service industry is about or what the Anchorage night scene was like. I thought I came home at a really cool time because there was still 36 was Crazy Fists were just starting to get they're getting a lot of headway coming out of Portland, and then Del Mag was still pretty big, and we had some really cool places back then. I mean, the Alley bar, which was across the street from the Cook, they had audio autopsy every like third Thursday, and that's where indefinite etiquette and Josh Boots, and it's just kind of like you had this hip hop head scene, but then you could go over to Humpy's, and there was a group, or there was a band called Dive Bar, and Jody and those guys would do their thing, and so for me it was really cool. I came in at a really cool time, and then not knowing exactly how much pent up, I wouldn't call it rage, but some of the lasting effects from some of the deployments that I'd already been on. I'm in an environment where I'm sober, but yet I'm having the opportunity to
Express yourself.
yes, let some aggression out in a proper format, and it was. But I loved it. I mean, between Pioneer Bar started there. Then I got to know the girls real well over at F Street, and Andy brought me in there in 2004. And between deployments and slope life, working up on the slope, and then various other, jobs and things that I did, I was able to do. I was always able to pick up a shift, and I worked at the Anchor, and I worked for Bryn and Antoine. I was with them at Killjoy when they first opened that up, and then when I got to meet you the first time at the Crude release party. At Brown Bag.
Yeah, Brown Bag.
And then we moved to the old woodshed, and so yeah, it was just it was really. I feel like that's kind of been. Ultimately, that's kind of how I got to know like the majority of the people that I know in the city was working downtown, and I thought it was kind of cool being a part of that life. And I'm not actively part of it. I'm not bouncing, I'm not bartending, I'm not doing anything like that, but I still know everyone. So, it's not uncommon for me to go out and just drive around. I just go stop in at different places and say hi. So, check on people, see how they're doing. And it's, for me, that's been kind of a nice community to be a part of.
For sure. How do you feel about drunk people?
I think everyone's entitled to go out and have fun. I think everyone should go out and have fun. And in an environment like here, where seasonal effectiveness from the lack of sunlight, it plays on everyone. Cabin fever is a real thing.
Sure.
But the thing that has always been something that I don't have a lot of tolerance for was just discounting or discrediting what happened the night before. Well, if I drink this, then I'm gonna lose control, or I'm not gonna be.
You don't want to see me on whiskey,
right? And it's like, well, then if you know that, then don't drink that.
For sure, yeah.
And try to be accountable. For me, I've had two moments in my life where I've absolutely blacked out, and in retrospect, it's embarrassing. Like I wake up, my head's spinning around. I don't know where I'm at. If I look like, I look like Ed Helms getting up in The Hangover. You're not sure if you've lost a tooth, like you feel like your rooms are spinning. There's a chicken walking across the floor.
Yeah.
It's only happened twice, but it was like twice too many. So I think drunk people are fine. I think they're more oftentimes than not, they're okay. But when it gets sideways fast.
How long were you a bouncer downtown?
So it was on and off, but I stopped in 2014. So on and off, I did it for about 11 years.
So for somebody who may be listening that's not familiar with the Anchorage downtown scene, what kind of stuff have you seen, and possibly what is some of the hairiest stuff you have seen?
Well, it's crazy. I mean, some of the stuff is legitimately scary, and being in F Street and watching a former AFC fighter, this guy was talking, he's being jovial, and he moved his beer bottle around and spilled some beer on his date. And the guy grabbed the bottle of beer and he broke it over the oyster bar where the cooks are at. And he took it and he pincushioned the guy in the neck. And And
The
then
UFC guy.
yeah, AFC. Yeah, it was an
AFC.
AFC. Yeah, local guy.
Okay.
So he's sticking this guy in the neck, and then he drops it, and the next thing you know, he's got to run past me and James, and we're there, and all he does is just palms James in the face, and he just kind of like does this stiff arm, Heisman Trophy looking deal, and he runs by me, and then Andy and I are trying to go after and get him, and then he'd already made it almost halfway down the block. And then I was like, we got to work on this guy. So then, from there, we got to go do triage on this guy and wait till the EMS shows up. But something like that, I mean, there was this one time where a bunch of slope workers decided to get into a fight with some semi-pro and pro hockey players that were hanging out at F Street. And that was it was like, I'm not going to drop any names, but it was just like to see these some of these yoked out Southern boys thinking that they're going to go to town with these guys, and nothing happened inside the bar.
It's all on ice.
The Zambonis coming down F Street. So they wound up all going outside, and they just had this massive melee right on F Street. And most people were standing there with their cocktails like right up on the window, and they're watching this thing. And a couple guys went outside with their drinks. I was like, get inside. And there's no reason for us to step in or get involved. Just let them figure it out.
Enjoy the show.
Right. It was crazy. But, I think there's been, I was really surprised to see some of the stuff that was going on, or the downtown, the partnership, and not to speak ill on their behalf, but kind of how they went at Brown Bag was really kind of interesting to me, because in the years past, I've seen the shed, or when the woodshed turned into the shed, I mean, it was like a mini Coots downtown. And so it was interesting to me to see how they took to them, or how they treated them, because I felt that was a little different.
And this is their location at the woodshed.
At the woodshed on 3rd Avenue.
On 3rd, yeah.
Yeah. Pioneer, lots of, especially when we had the backward hat crew, all the guys from Turnigan Hardcore, and those guys, they made for some interesting nights, and just a lot of bar fights, but nothing as crazy to me as like my buddy James took a shot in the leg at
a gunshot.
Okay. At Platinum Jacks.
Really?
And thankfully, honestly, God, and this is the last place I would have thought I would ever be worried, was Killjoy. It was just right around this time of year. I think it was post holiday season, and I was hanging out, and Killjoy I loved Killjoy because they wore slacks and suspenders and nice shirts.
Yeah, that place was awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool.
It's like a wine bar, right?
Yeah, it was a wine bar. Yeah, wine and beer, and but across the way from us, across the street, was the Playhouse, and I don't know, God knows what happens in that parking lot that's on 3rd, back there where usually the carnival sets up for Rondi.
Right next to the Sunshine Building.
Right, the Sunshine Plaza right behind
Yeah.
Next thing, I'm standing out there, I'm just hanging out, and no kidding, 10 shots pop off, and then I'm like, I just go inside, I lock the door of the Killjoy, and I'm like, everybody get out. And we funneled everyone out onto the D Street entrance to Brown Bag, and then we had them leave there and go onto 5th Avenue, because we didn't know. I was worried for our patrons. I was worried for myself. I was like, if I could survive Afghanistan, I get plugged on 4th Avenue.
Jeez,
it's sad. So we locked her up and we got everyone out. But I think that's some of the crazier stuff. I mean, more good than bad happened in all that time. There was some, I remember there being a couple of really big melees inside the Anchor, but I think some of that just goes back to some of the staff we had on at time. I tried to use more verbal judo than actual putting my hands on, being physical with people, and some of the guys that we worked with were were down to ground and pound, and I was just like, yeah, but this isn't Thursday night at the fights. This is we just got a job, and this guy's he's lippy, but I don't know if he needs to get his head bounced off of asphalt. So it's a little crazy here and there.
Well, that seems to be pretty typical as far as somebody who is able to inflict harm and knows that they can are less likely to do that. As far as I've seen, I've talked to and heard from UFC fighters, and they're like the calmest, mellowest people.
Absolutely. And you have people that actually, beside their training, they respect what their training provides, the kind of discipline and what goes behind what they're learning. And it's more than just the defensive or the offensive aspects of you being out and potentially having to defend yourself or your friends, your loved one. But it's also like there's a mantra to it. Like you really don't want to disrespect the time you've put into whatever form of martial art that you're into. And so it's kind of, I always like the old adage, like, I know just enough to get in trouble. You just got enough of like a half-ass understanding of something, or a couple moves, and then you think you're Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
It's like the first guys that are ready to roll, and it's like, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
It's like in that documentary Roadhouse. I want you to be nice until it's time not to be nice.
Great documentary, by the way.
Yeah. Rest in peace to the Sways.
Oh man, I love that movie so much, and it's so like
accurate. Would you say?
I don't know. It's so funny to me to think that there's like these two guys, there's like Dalton and Wade Garrett, and they're like known synonymously throughout the country.
The best in the biz.
Yeah, the best. They're the absolute best coolers. And I mean, he's in Kansas, but he was like a top, he was the top cooler at some bar in Manhattan. And yet, he's like, well, this guy from the Double Deuce is going to make it worth my while to come down here and I'm going to take care of this place.
Clean up this town.
Did you guys recently watch this show
I'm
or this
sorry.
movie?
I just know this stuff.
You just know it.
I try to watch it, once every couple months just to stay sharp.
And the bad guy, just so y'all know, Brad Wesley, bad guy. He brought J.C. Penney to that town.
The first time a throat rip has actually been documented on any format, really.
Oh, man. Okay, so in preparation for this conversation, Mike and I have been texting back and forth, and one concern that he said you had was overstating your military service, because I'd like to get into that and kind of talk a little bit about it. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that kind of sentiment is common with people who feel like they could have done more, even if the reality is they did all they could, which was more than enough.
No, that's an accurate statement. I think for me, it's just like I went over to Afghanistan for the first time right after 9/11. And so being over there, in such a close proximity to when those, horrific events happened, it's not, I leave those events and those things that happen. I kind of, at this point in time, like, I don't mind sharing with some of the people that I'm closest to, and I don't have no problem telling you what I did, but some of those things that are the most impactful on me, I leave that again to people I trust, or I leave that to my therapist. And and in all honesty, like, I think a lot of the things that I experienced and got to be a part of and I got to see, it really impacted me. But at the same time, I got to work around people like Roger Sparks and Jimmy Settle and Chris Robertson. And I knew a lot of the guys from the Alaska team. So I don't know. It's like you don't really need to compare because that's not at all what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be proud. You need to be understanding of whatever it is your impact was, whatever role it is you played when you were in that environment, or we call it the AOR, the area of responsibility. And I'm not trying to compare because those guys are just amazing. Like those stories are crazy. But what it is I got to experience and what I got to see was crazy enough for me. it was, and I think from having that security forces background and being a part of detainee missions, picking up Al-Qaeda, Taliban detainees, and various, crazy locations, and then getting them over into the EU, getting them loaded up on other aircraft so they can go, Guantanamo, picking up wounded, helping out with some of the different special ops missions as far as, and not like, it's not like I was on a 4-wheeler and going out with those guys or, running into caves. No, the plane would land. I would get out. And at the time, like, we didn't even have our M4s yet. We had like M16s. So we're like standing out there, engine running, going on. And we're like watching these guys come on, and we're there just in case we start to take fire. We got to return fire back. But then, like, you see these guys come up, and they've got like the coolest new gear. It's like you show up on the. My buddy said this. Jason said, he goes, it's like, you ever feel like you're stepping onto the basketball court and everyone's got Jordans and you're in like an old ass Larry Bird pair of Converse. And that's kind of how we felt, because like these guys, like their M4s were tricked out, and they had these really cool camo paint jobs on them, and like they had all the newest gear, and like we're rocking with whatever they had in the Cold War.
You got some Chuck Taylors on.
We got some old steel pots on. We're like, we got your back. Like, no, you don't. But like we did, there were on all those missions that I got to fly on and get to be a part of. You see this, I don't want to call it like a decay, but it's definitely like a lack of humanity. And, this is something that I talked with my therapist about. And he's like, well, you do realize like there were, these detainees, they were sold, like they would want to see you dead. I'm like, sure, I get that. There are enemies. They're who we're going after. There's this combined effort in their mantra, and the way they're feeling is, they're excited that 3,000 people died on that day. They're happy that this is one of the, the single greatest attacks on U.S. soil since Pearl Harbor. But when you see somebody stripped down in a coverall, burlap sack over their head, duct tape around their neck, arms zip tied around their back, and they're chained to the floor, they're pissing and shitting themselves, and then still, there's other service members that I'm with, and they're coming up behind with batons, and they're cracking dudes in the collarbone or the kidney, and I'm just like, hey, they're down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. They're like, well, if they start tapping their feet on the floor of the plane, then maybe they could be trying to communicate with each other through Morse code. And I'm like, dude, no, there's no uprising at this point.
Yeah,
like they're chained to the floor. Like livestock gets treated better than this. So, I think being a part of so many of those missions, and then doing the medevac missions, and oh man, I can't tell you like what it brings up and like what it feels like when that's not something you've been, and I don't know if you can condition anybody for that, but it's that it's your brother and sisters in arms, and you're there for a common goal, but my job is not right there on the forefront. we're picking him up and we're going to get him. We're going to get him to some medical care, but it's still, there's nothing like seeing that. It's nothing like being in that environment, and it's just go, go, go. And everything's moving, and you're jumping from one plane to the next plane. You're doing debriefs left and right. You're experiencing live fire. Mm-hmm. There's dust plumes kicking up around you, and you're like, oh yeah, those are rounds. Mm-hmm. There's rounds coming at me right now. And then even though the C-130s we had armor plating on it, like you could still tell when that AAA ammunition's hitting the bird, mm-hmm. And that's a scary feeling. And then next thing you know, the counter defensive measures are kicking off. There's all of a sudden we're locked on, with an RPG or a SAM, and something's coming at us, and we got to, do evasive maneuvers, and they got to kick out chaff and flare, and they got to try to, get us out of it. And it's just this, like, for almost 8 months, it was this continuous evolution of, hurry up and get ready, or hurry up and get used to this. Mm-hmm. And then it's time to come home. And my first time being at Chilkoot Charlie's was in July of 2002 when I came back from Afghanistan. And we're hanging out with my friends, and we're having a good time. And I was like, I wasn't totally sketched out, because I always had somebody within arm's length, like I felt comfortable, I felt secure, I felt safe. But it's like, it's funny and sad at the same time, but I didn't know what it's like when you close the bar down and it's time to leave. Mm-hmm. And we're right there at the old bar, and we're heading out the door, and they turn on the air siren. And the air siren hits. It's super loud. It's not expected. And I hit the ground. Like, I dropped. Mm-hmm. And my friends are kind of looking at me. They're like, what is wrong? And I was just like, and I had to play it off. I had to try to act like it was a joke, or I meant to do it, or whatever. But, as I stand up and my shirt's covered in sawdust and old beer, I think that's the first time I really recognized that something's changed. Mm-hmm. And this is something that I'm going to have to wrap my head around.
I feel like I kind of got the sentiment when you were describing, you didn't want to like compare it, or you wanted to be respectful of, the people that you feel like did more. But I remember you saying that I was just doing my job. Like, this is just my job. But I mean, if your job was not to necessarily go out and to attack mode, I mean, you still had to see things that you weren't ready for in doing that job. So, I mean, it's almost like you're, maybe even less prepared than for some of the stuff that you had to see, maybe.
Yeah. God bless the military. I think the U.S. Air Force did, especially, I went through training I went through basic in 98, and then training kicked in. Tech school was in 99. And, really the only thing at that time was we were still doing Operation Northern Watch out of Turkey, and we were doing Operation Southern Watch out of Kuwait and Saudi, and I think Bahrain and UAE, maybe Qatar too. But anyway, it was like more or less, I would consider that time frame kind of like a peacetime, and even though we had guys that were over in that area working, I always joked around. My first time getting to go was in Kuwait, and that was in 99. And I affectionately called those deployments pre 9/11. I called it Air Force Fat Camp, because everyone went over and they got dark and they lost like 20 or 30 pounds. You got extra money in your because you were in a, hazard pay area. We all traveled. We all went into Riyadh, or we went to in Kuwait. We went to Faha Hill, or went to the Filipino market, or UAE. We drive to Dubai, or we go hang out in Abu Dhabi. It was cool, man. It was like a field trip.
Mm-hmm.
And even though there were some things that spun out on those trips, like when we had to provide security for embassy personnel after the USS Cole got bombed. We went to Yemen and helped, grab people and got them out. And I think the training that we got at the time was just like, it matched our environment. And it was just kind of like, oh, we're going to give you like some baseline stuff for hand-to-hand combat. We're going to familiarize you on all these different weapons. Not that you're going to use them on a day-to-day basis, or not that we're expecting us to wind up in a war sometime.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the 16, here's the M203 grenade launcher, here's the 249 SAW, here's the M60. And like you get to, like you said, we got to play with all this stuff. I got to throw a grenade, and it's like, I actually got to shoot a law rocket, but it was like, it was like fantasy camp, for like a G.I. Joe fantasy camp.
Mm-hmm.
And then like you come hurtling back down to earth when you get to your first base. And it's just, well, you're going to be a combination of security and law enforcement. So part of the time you're going to be sitting on a ramp watching dust collect on on an old Ford truck, or you're going to be at a gate and you're going to be waving people in or checking IDs. So it's like, to go from that environment to this is real world.
Mm-hmm.
We're being attacked. We are afraid of having another attack. And now we're going to go over there and we're going to do what we do. But, you get over there and you're like, well, what is it? What is it we do?
Mm-hmm.
How does this look? And you learn it all on the fly.
Just baptism by fire.
Hell yeah. And it's not, and I don't blame anyone, or I don't chastise what I was a part of and how it happened. I think given the circumstances, we all did the best job we could. And I think, whether or not you agree with the politics behind it, or the diplomacy, or Afghanistan, Iraq, whatever, I'm never going to besmirch or look down on anyone that spent their time there, whether you were turning a wrench on a air conditioning unit or you're a badass like Roger Sparks.
Mm-hmm.
I got nothing but love for you, because you hang out under that sun in those conditions in that area. It's not fun.
In my experience with these conversations, I've encountered, you've mentioned Roger Sparks, the retired Marine and pararescue, but I've also encountered it a number of other times in different professions, where you have somebody who sees the reality of something that the average civilian will recklessly just talk shit about, right? And then once you see it, once you're a part of it, like once you're among it, you have this newfound respect for it. It's very interesting to me, and I think that there's actually a line from this book, Ender's Game. It's like I'm going to butcher the line, but it's like something to the effect that once you kind of completely understand somebody, it's difficult not to love them.
That's a great line. I think I really have to be cautious about what conversations I choose to let myself be a part of, and looking at what's going on right now in the death of that general, the Iranian general. I don't know if a lot of people have, like, I don't think it's really, everyone's responsibility to know the history of all of that stuff, or to understand where all that stuff comes from. But I really I applaud, or I encourage people to look into the research of it or into the backstories of it, because I was at Bubbly Mermaid on Saturday, and there's so many little not issues, but there's so many events that general had been a part of that had costs of loss of life, and not just the one U.S. contractor, but other military members over the years. And this guy just kind of looked, or he was sitting behind me, and he goes, "Oh, well, that happened 20 years ago." And I became enraged, and I stood up, my stool came flying out, and I walked up, and I'm like, what does it matter?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to put shelf life on it? After 10 years, it's okay. And I knew people when I first joined. I knew people that were survivors of the Khobar Tower explosion when they blew it. We had so many service members. I think from almost every branch that were staying inside this hotel, and that's where they were staying. And I'm not 100% sure about whether or not this former general was a part of it. I was reading a couple of different articles that were kind of alluding to him having some part of that, or having some part of the planning, but they backed up
of that incident with the tower.
Yeah, the Khobar Towers.
The Khobar Towers.
Yeah, but they backed up a truck full of C4 up to this hotel. Nobody, the gate guards, which were host nationals, they weren't Americans. They're Americans that were on the inner perimeter, but it was close enough, and it was enough material to make that big of an explosion. And losing, an estimate, I think it was, somewhere between 400 and 600 people had died in that event. And, to have some slack-jawed goofball sit there and be like, well, it was 20 years ago. I'm just like, it doesn't matter.
What was his response after you said that?
He just sat there and he was like, do you understand the ripple effects? Do you understand how things can escalate? And I was laughing. I go, it's funny to me. I says, Syria had gassed some, I think it was orphans. It was women and children that had died under Assad. China has an active interest with Syria. The one day these women and children died in Syria, the next day Trump is in China having dinner, eating a steak with the prime minister, the premier. And even though knowing that China has an interest in Syria, he still sent 30 or 40 Tomahawk missiles and took out, some of these. I don't know how many casualties came out of it, but I knew he took out some radar sites, and he took them out. And I was just like, he's sitting with the guy who's got an interest in what's going on in Syria, and he had, and nothing spun out of that. And I said, that's the ripple effect. It's anything that's going to be done on a grand scale, and this is just my opinion. I'm no, tactician. I'm not a former anything really, but there's got to be a power struggle that's gonna come out of it, or some kind of an immense amount of money or power to be gained. And right now this stuff it squabbles on a international, on a global level, but is it enough to pull in one of these other superpowers to say, yeah, we're going to stand up to the U.S.? And I just don't see it. I don't see it because we have, even with China's military being, so much, as far as personnel goes, so much larger than ours, I still don't see where, nobody wants to see World War III. Nobody wants to see that kind of carnage. And the stuff that's going on right now, I wish there was somebody that could come in there and and really like Kissinger, like Henry Kissinger is like probably one of the biggest people that I look to, or I looked up to when it comes to diplomacy. And the way him and Nixon dealt with Khrushchev and the Russians, and the way they dealt with the Chinese, and this is like 50 years ago, and we know we got the big stick. We know we got the bigger stick than almost anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to have a soft tongue, and you got to be able to come in and be able to like put down, a viable plan or viable option, so you understand it's not going to be tit for tat, because things can escalate. But as far as like me talking to this guy at the Bubbly Mermaid, I was just, how much am I going to go into that with somebody at a bar?
And you're not going to change his mind.
No, it wasn't worth it. I excused myself. I went home early, but I just like, it enrages me to think that there's, in some people's mind, there's some amount of time that can go by, and it's like, oh, it's not a big deal because it happened 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to their families.
Mm-hmm.
Because, 9/11 was almost 20 years ago. And you mean to tell me the families of those 3,000 people still don't miss their loved ones? They still don't care? So it's just, stuff like that it can kind of get to me, but I got to, pick and choose my battles and not try to, it's not my job to go out there and fight everyone. So sometimes maybe you got to shut down your ear, turn a blind eye, or just excuse yourself and be the bigger guy.
I've said this before on the podcast, and it's what I truly believe about kind of entertainment journalism. If you're watching the worst parts about CNN, or you're watching, Fox News, honestly, in general, most of the time, MSNBC as well, you're watching one talking head arguing against another talking head, and each of them have one point about an issue that has a multitude of points. It's a very complicated situation, whatever they're talking about, right? And as a viewer, you're looking at that, and it is tantamount to a sports game, right? So you're watching your team arguing against or competing against the other team, the opposing team, and you're rooting for your team to win. And that's all you're rooting for. And it's rooted in argument, right? So getting back to your guy at the Bubbly Mermaid, he has been conditioned to understand politics as an aggressor.
Like a football game.
Like a football match, exactly, rather than a civil conversation, because change is not going to occur if we are all sitting here arguing.
Mm-mm. And it's funny. You use the football analogy. My whole flight chief, Rusty, he always cracked me up because he always called it. He's like, man, I really wish we could get somebody like, because he always used the analogy like professional wrestling. He was like, he's like, somebody's the protagonist, someone's the heel, and you got Mean Gene in the middle with the microphone.
That's sadder, but it's also, I think, more closer to it. So who's Ric Flair? That's the question.
Yeah. Hannity. And the other thing is, I think a lot of this plays into the mental health side of things, and with mental health being like, I'm sad that there's been so many like horrible and catastrophic events that have happened in this nation, and it's like almost all stemming back to this instability, this issue with mental health, and yet somehow, some way, this individual was able to get their hands on a weapon. But then I look at the guys, the men and women that I've served with, and I go back and I look at my team, people that I used to deploy with, and I'll be 40 at the end of the month, and I've lost 16 friends, and half of that is to suicide. I'm not proud of this, but I've almost committed suicide twice. And early on, when I was still serving, when I was still in the military, it was looked down upon to go and seek help. And, it was looked at like if you didn't seem like you were, if you didn't seem like you were all together, or if it seemed like you were having a hiccup with something going on up in the toys in the attic, we always called it, our nickname for it was, we called it the Rod Squad. And ROD stands for Relieved of Duty. And nobody wanted to wind up on the Rod Squad. You're out there, you're still getting paid, you're still in the service, but you're painting rocks, or you're planting trees, or you're doing, shit work.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for a lot of us, and I don't know, a lot of the guys from the Alaska team, I think the overall culture and environment has changed for the better. And the men and women that serve are able to go make those appointments and go get to see someone and go talk to someone and not be admonished or not be put on some kind of administrative leave or have to be looked at with a jaundiced eye. I wasn't conditioned to be a pararescueman. I wasn't trained to be a door kicker. And yet, I had my own internal struggles with, like I said, the lack of humanity, the seeing people at their absolute worst, and seeing people break down, and in understanding myself and where I was going to break down and where I was going to have issues. And I'm so happy I have a therapist now, and it's been going on for a few months. I've been doing EMDR therapy, and it's been really great having someone to talk to, go over these events, go over these horrific things that I saw, and then be able to process it in a way where at the end of it, you are basically putting yourself in a different situation. You're putting yourself in a different place.
Mm-hmm.
And you can think about, what your involvement was, the fact that you were just doing your job, and not to put so much of that on yourself. And honestly, man, I think if they did a better job, and I think they're trying to do a good job, but what took the catalyst, I think it took us to get to a point where we're statistically losing 22 veterans a day to suicide.
Really?
Yeah. And, it's sometimes I think the pain of our existence is social media, but I really I'm happy that they've got these different groups together on Instagram, on Facebook, whatever it is. People that do therapy, live therapy, they go Instagram live.
Mm-hmm.
And these, the vet centers here locally in Anchorage, and just the different things they've got for people that have PTSD or have traumatic brain injuries. I suffered TBIs. I have PTSD. And then also people that suffer from military sexual trauma. And, there's something else. That's another thing I have. And so it's you have these three things that are now being dealt with, or now are between the VA and your active duty service. So whether you're part of the VA choice program, or whether you're part of Tri-West or Tri-Care, they want to get people in the right mindset, not only while they're serving, but once they're out. Because once you're out, I can't speak for everyone, but for myself personally, I got this feeling of free falling. And I was what's going to catch me?
Well, you entered in 98. How old were you?
I was 18.
Yeah. So you spent the majority of your life in the military.
I mean, yeah, I entered December of 98, and I separated July of 09. So from 18 to 29,
yeah,
I was a member of the U.S. military, and there's not a day that goes by that I'm not proud of my service. I'm not proud of what it is I experienced and what I got to see and what I got to be a part of. There's so many amazing things that I got to do, but there are some key events that have totally altered my life, you know?
So what is it that gets you to begin the therapy process? Because it seems like for a lot of people, like the idea of going into counseling or admitting that they have, you know, they don't have a perfect handle on their situation is like, you know, walking in the door, admitting to yourself, then you kind of lose this ability to pretend that it's fine. So what was it in your case where you kind of just had to, you know, start looking for a new solution?
You know, I think for me, it was even up until the day I separated, I didn't dare think about going and seeking help, because at that time, I still felt like there was a good chance I would be looked at differently or I'd be treated differently if I was seeking counseling. I kind of got to a breaking point in 2011. It was 2 years after I had just got back from Oman. I was a contractor over there. I was working at in fact, it's crazy, Cody. I was an expat working at a refinery 45 minutes like east of the Yemen border during the Arab Spring.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, Tunisia went down, Egypt, Mubarak got overthrown. There were riots everywhere. The place was insane. The Royal Omani Air Force was sending helos and up-armored Land Cruisers, and they were driving up and down our roads because they were pretty sure that, you know, refugees from Yemen were going to come over. And they were known for stopping their own countrymen. They were known for stopping Omanis at gunpoint and taking their mobile and their car and, you know, leaving them for dead in the desert. So, you know, they get their hands on my fat ass, like, Yahtzee. But I did my time over there. I finished out my contract. I came home, and I was just listening to like AM radio, and somebody was on, you know, I can't remember what show I was listening to, but someone was talking about, there was an interview with a soldier, and he was talking about how it's affected his day-to-day life, and of all places to pull aside, to pull over and break down, I was in the parking lot at the Bush Company.
Before or after entry?
Before.
Okay.
I didn't go in. I was not going into the Bush Company sobbing is not it's
One
not a
lap
good look.
dance, please.
No, this guy's got real problems. So no, I pulled into the I didn't think I was safe on the road, and I pulled over and then the parking lot, and I put the truck in park, and I just, man, I blubbered. I cried like a baby, and I was thinking about, I was like, I shouldn't be like this. This isn't what should be going on.
In those moments when you do break down, are you thinking about something specific, or is it just in general?
Honest to God, it's a culmination of everything.
Yeah.
It's just kind of knowing that you've got this, you've got all these memories, you've got all these events that you've lived, and all these things that have happened, and it all comes rushing at one time. And I think that's why it was so impactful, and it's why it's so, it's what brought me to this point where, like, I really had to, like, let it out. And thankfully, on that program, they had given out an 800 number to, if you were having thoughts of suicide or if you needed help from the VA, please call this number. And I called, and I was crying, I was bawling, and I was just like, I need help. And they're like, well, you know, you're in Anchorage, the VA medical center is over off Muldoon, blah, blah, blah.
When you call this 800 number, they refer you to something else.
The guy that I talked to on the phone was really, like, nice. He really wanted to, like, you know, like, let me talk to you right now. I want to get an understanding of where you're at, like, your headspace right now. And let me I want to try to comfort you during this time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, what do you call it when you're breathing too fast? And I was hyperventilating.
Yeah.
And I had to calm down. I was on the phone with this poor guy in Oklahoma or Ohio or whatever this call center was at. I mean, I was on the phone with them for like 45 minutes. And then finally, once I calmed down, I was okay. That's when I got enrolled at the VA, and going through there, getting to talk to people, understanding what that process is and how to go about things. It opened up kind of a full menu of what it is they're there to provide. I owe so much to the VA. Like, honest to God, like, I don't even know. Being 6 foot, 370 pounds, like, it's not I'm not in the best shape. I'm not in the best health, but I don't think I'd be as healthy as I am right now if it wasn't for their help. The mental health aspect of it was a little disappointing at times because, like I was telling Mike, most of the people I would go talk to, it felt like it turned into like a regular therapy session. How's your week? How's work? How's your relationship? How's this? How's that? And nobody was like
making you stare at it, basically.
Yeah, like going to the foundation of, why is it you're breaking down and crying? Why is it, what happened? Let's talk about these events. And then when I moved out of state briefly, I was in Indiana for a couple of years, and then I moved back, and I knew I needed to go see a therapist. And when I was at Indiana, I had a social worker that I talked to on the regular, and he was pretty good. But when I got here, they didn't have enough room for me. We have too many people that we're seeing. All of our mental health specialists are taken up at the moment. So now this gave me a chance to go out into the community. And I found this guy, Brian McInnes, and I was to understand that he does EMDR therapy, and I did some research on it, and I heard that had been very helpful with a lot of vets that had PTSD and had different things that they were facing. And this guy, like, let's get right to it. Let's open up the box. Let's figure out, let's pull everything out. And this
was the first time that someone, like Mike said earlier, made you stare at it.
Absolutely. And that's 3 months ago. And it's, here we are. I got enrolled in 2011, and now we're in 2020. And, it took me 8 years to see somebody, or to finally get with somebody where I click, because it is important that you click with whoever you're talking to. But I click with this guy, like, he listens, and he's like, let's see how we're going to process this. And it's been really helpful. And it's honest to God, it's kicking my depression in the ass. And that's, I'm eternally grateful for what I'm getting to go through now, and what I'm getting to experience.
If you don't mind me asking, and you can get as in-depth or as shallow as you like, but what was that first session like where it was a breakthrough and you're like, holy crap, this is working?
So the first thing we talked about was the Al-Qaeda and Taliban, the detainee missions. And the thing that made me feel like it was a breakthrough was the fact that Brian explained to me that it was okay for me to have some of the, I don't know if you want to call it remorse, but definitely like empathetic to what these guys were being, how they were being treated and how things were happening, and not to think like I'm less of a patriot or I'm less of a soldier, because it was, to my understanding, the other thing that like was kind of fucking me up when we were over there, and I don't know what the percentage was, but I knew that there were some of the able-bodied males that they had recruited were guys that they were going through some of these different villages, and it was like, either you're going to help fight the cause or we're going to take you and your family out. So it's like again, I don't know what the percentage was. Maybe it was 10%, maybe it was 20%. I don't know. But I have to admit, I have to imagine in like all these missions that I did and all these guys that got interrogated and got processed as detainees, as prisoners, I have to imagine some of them weren't even into it. They didn't even want to fight. And for that, we've got them, like I said, we've got them chained up. We've got them, got burlap sacks over their head. There's, duct tape around their necks. And it's like, I can't even fathom myself getting put into a position like that. To enjoy, I was fortunate enough to be raised and born in this country, but what a godsend, like what a blessing it is that I got to live and grow up here.
Absolutely.
And not be subjected to that,
Mm-hmm.
So you were like conflicted that you were kind of empathizing with, the person that's supposed to be considered the enemy, basically.
Yeah. And I guess if it was very procedural, and if it was done with, if we had done those missions with like a little more humanity, or if we had been able to do those things, and I didn't have to see guys getting cracked with batons and seeing guys just getting fucked up for just sitting there, maybe it wouldn't have been, it wouldn't have had such a big impact.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I think the inhumane treatment alone was just hard to experience. It was hard to see, and it took sitting down with Brian to help process that and understand that you're not wrong, and you're allowed to feel these feelings. And I think it's too simple. It's too easy to go back and say something like, war is hell. Well, of course, war is hell, but you have to find a way to process that stuff. You got to find a way to deal with the things that you were involved with,
I've just recently started reading a lot about the Civil War, but that was just terrible hand-to-hand combat. And I would imagine...
You remember that, Johnny, right?
Said you're turning 40. But I would imagine those men suffered terrible PTSD.
Absolutely.
And so as we kind of look at at least the American wars through the years, you have Vietnam, and Vietnam has its own type of literature, right? That wasn't like World War II, where World War II was primarily letters written back to loved ones, right? Then you get into Vietnam and you have people like Tim O'Brien, right? Writing about how he thinks the enemy is feeling. So all of a sudden you have this other that they are considering their emotions and, their drive and their wants and their desires, which I think it's got to be a pretty new thing, a new concept in war. Because as you were saying, there's this person tied up and they're being beat and they're being questioned. I think that's a lot different than shooting someone from 300 yards, and just seeing a dot just fall.
Right. No, I think there's some people, I think that, and I certainly don't think they're sociopaths, or I don't think there's, a screw loose or whatever, but some people know how to compartmentalize their events, or they know how to, disassociate that from what their normal life is when they get back stateside. And for those guys, I tip my hat to you. If you know how to separate those two things, and you know how to, deal with that in your own way, that's great. But that's a real small percentage. You're face to face with it, and and it's not just the detainee missions. Some of the times surviving, me personally, surviving a mortar blast and trying to associate like the fact that this isn't going to happen when you're home and you're safe, but you still don't feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, it's hard for me to be at a professional sports event or a state fair or a mall or a movie theater. And
Is it too loud?
I don't know if it's the loudness so much as it is. I think it's like you're almost anticipating some kind of chaos. And I hate saying it like this, but I think it's the best way I can put this. You always feel like a Jerry Bruckheimer movie is going to kick off at any second.
Yeah.
There's going to be an explosion somewhere. I mean, just before we got here, I'm standing in line at Starbucks at Fred Meyer's on Northern Lights, and I hate admitting this, but I'm thinking to myself, what if an active shooter happens? I'm standing here. What if someone starts popping off rounds? And I look, and there's an emergency exit, right to my right. That's it's the west entrance to Fred Meyer's, and I constantly think about what I'm going to do if something crazy spins off, something happens. And
I kind of want to go back to the active shooter. What if one comes into, say, Fred Meyer, right? As you were there, the reality of what that feels like, to some degree, maybe not an active shooter in a Western civilization, but a shooter nonetheless.
right.
There are people that don't have active duty, that walk around with guns on their hips, that is their freaking dream.
Yeah, they're definitely like fantasizing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're in that same Starbucks line thinking, God, I wish there was an active shooter that just came in here and I could be a hero.
I wish they would. I wish they would.
Wish a motherfucker would. Yeah, and for people like that, it's
a weird one.
It's baptism by fire.
Mm-hmm.
Because now, put up or shut up, and now you have a situation where there's someone that's crazy or someone that's out of their mind, and like you said, it's Western civilization. It's so many of these active shooter events have happened, across the country, and not to say I think Alaska's like the worst place to if you think you're gonna do that, or if you're gonna spin off, and like you're in the worst place to do this. Like here in Texas, like everyone's carrying, so
Mm-hmm.
there's a good chance you're not gonna have to worry about the cops. But I think that you're right. Having this active duty background, having these deployments behind my back, having these events and things that happen, I guess sometimes I'm trying to realize, is it okay for me to have these feelings? Is it okay for me to think like this, or is this a detriment, to my being? And I guess there's one half of me that's like, you're overthinking everything. You're not, you don't need to think like that. But then there's another side of me that's kind of like, well, if it happens, then I've already made a game plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I already kind of know what I'm going to do. And I hope to God, I pray to God that nothing ever spins off and nothing ever happens here. And I don't want to see anyone get hurt or killed or maimed. But, I think I've come to this point, this realization that this just might be part of my makeup. Maybe it's just part of who I am now.
Well, in 10 years of bouncing, I mean, you're kind of getting paid to be on alert, looking for stuff to jump off, right? So that probably adds to it quite a bit.
And I miss that. And in some aspects, I miss that call to order and that ability to, be there for people. And I remember I worked for OSHA for, the greater part of 4 or 5 years. And it felt good when I got to go into a place and I got to bring up some of these key safety deficiencies, and I would try to help them. And it was all in the name of making sure that everyone went home safe at night. But then there's those moments where I've gone to active, fatality investigations where the guy's still there or the gal, and
Body.
and you're, we would show up before the coroner showed up.
What was your job at this point?
At this point, I was with OSHA. I was a compliance, safety, and health officer, or what we call a COSHO.
Okay.
And I was typically I was the lead investigator on the scene. And from there, you come in and it's a very somber environment. You want to be respectful to the coworkers, the people that are around there. You do your concentric circle and you're taking pictures and you're kind of winding yourself, into the point of impact. And, it's, I think I kind of enjoyed, or I really loved that job, because I did feel like, although there wasn't the rush and the urgency that called for me when I was in combat, but I still knew at the end of the day that there was something I was doing to try to have a helpful impact, or try to make sure that this catastrophic event or this accident didn't happen again. And it was all very real, and it made me feel like I was still in the fight somehow.
Something that you keep bringing up, and you included in the bio, thank you, by the way, that you sent to Mike and Mike forwarded it to me, is this idea of duty. How do you balance your sense of duty with the inevitable long-term physical and mental pain that comes with it?
I don't mean to sound like a Boy Scout, but one of the core values in the Air Force is service before self. And, they beat that into our heads, when we're young. And some people, can just listen to the 3 core values and just kind of move about their day. But, I took that stuff to heart. And I think I took a lot of pride in the fact that I joined. My grandfather was an immigrant from Italy, and he served with the U.S. Army during World War II. And my uncle and my dad were Air Force and Army during the Vietnam era, and now my brother and myself have been a part of this, this era, this environment. My brother served in Kuwait and Iraq, and I was all over the damn Middle East, but I had my part too. And that service before self didn't end in 2009 when I separated. I carried that in my time at the doors, at at various bars, my time working up on the slope, my time as a contractor for the FAA, my time with OSHA. It was really all about, either the people around me or the guys I work with.
And I would guess that it didn't start in 98 either, considering your family has been in the military.
Yeah, my dad actually, it's funny because I feel like I was already kind of preconditioned before I left. My dad having a military background and having that, as well as my dad retired as the chief of OSHA for Alaska in 2006. And my stepmom was, she was in charge of, she was like the HR director for FedEx. So in my household, it was all rules. It was all ethics. It was, morals, and, all the way down to, making your bed right. You make sure you got hospital corners. And I already had kind of a stringent upbringing, and then knowing that my dad was out there trying to make a safer work environment in the state, it made me feel like, I was really proud of what my dad did, and I wanted to I wanted to try as best as I can to have the same kind of impact my dad had.
Do you remember or have any situations that really stick out to you about being proud of your dad? Like a story or something that he told you and, you know, it was a moment where you're like, my dad's a hero.
There's a lot of stories, but I think, you know, he came home from, I can't remember if it was a Lignagik or it was somewhere out in Bristol Bay, and he had done an accident investigation involving I call a foreign national or someone that was over here working at one of the seafood processing places, you know, from another country.
Okay.
The guy didn't know how to speak English. And, you know, they were processing fish, and they've got these conveyor belts with these little hooks on them. And they had these mesh gloves, like chain mesh gloves. Mm-hmm. And the glove got caught on one of the hooks, and it ran his arm through the mechanical portion of the conveyor, and it mangled his arm. And I remember when Dad came home, and he had to interview the guy, and they had to get the state provided a translator to come in, and Dad talked, and like just hearing him describe how much it meant to him to be an advocate for this guy, this poor guy whose life is permanently changed. Mm-hmm. And it made me stop and think about the times I used to be embarrassed because my dad was known for, like, he would crack me up. Like, we'd be driving somewhere across town, you know, we're, you know, run an errand, or we're going to go have lunch or something like that when I was a kid. And he'd see something, he'd see like an imminent danger, or he'd see somebody up on a rooftop without a fall protection harness. And he'd pull the car over, and I'm like, God, does he have to do this? And it used to like embarrass me because I would just get out, and like he would call on somebody. If he couldn't handle it right then and there, he'd call somebody else that worked for him. Hey, you get your ass down here, and you know, you need to hook these guys up. And I was like, oh, he's a safety police, and you know, they give my dad a badge, and he's like, he's such a fan of these like cop dramas, like NYPD Blue and Law and Order, and I'm like, oh, I thought he was like corny, but then something like this happens. And like I said, he became an advocate for this person, and he wanted to make sure that they are going to permanently change their culture so this doesn't happen to someone else. Mm-hmm. And I was just really proud. I was really proud of my dad because I was just like, man, that's the kind of impact I want to have. I want to know that I can go into somewhere and spot a problem or see something wrong and change it permanently so something like this doesn't happen again. I think it's pretty powerful.
So you'd mentioned that the core value of service before self. Sort of interesting too, though, that you kind of got to a wall at one point where, you know, you realize you have to start taking care of yourself to be useful to anybody else. How does that kind of translate now at this point?
Well, it was ultimately, it came to a point where it was critical that I do look at taking care of myself on certain issues, certain topics. Otherwise, I was starting to question whether or not, you know, what's my value, what's my worth to these people that I run across, the people I come in contact with, if I'm not taking care of myself. So, I mean, there's that. But then the other part of it is I'm volunteering with the USO at base, or whether I'm helping out with youth hockey. I think that there's always an opportunity. There's always a chance. I don't want to say mentoring because that's probably that's not what I'm really going for. But at my root core, I'm always trying to steer people in the right direction, or at least have a direction that's going to have a positive outcome for them. But it's not just me guessing. That comes from me getting to talk with people. Let me know a little bit more about you. Let me know some of your background. Let me know your history, and then give them some kind of a take on things, or just, here's my personal experience, and I dealt with X, Y, and Z during this time in my life. And really, I mean, they could take it or leave it, but I would be remiss, or I would feel bad or less than if I didn't, give them that little bit of wisdom, or try to impart some of that wisdom on them.
I've always thought that, like dealing with anything that's like painful or terrible or whatever, like the only way that you can really make that useful or justify it is by being able to understand it for somebody else if they're going through it. And I think even just talking about like what you're discussing so openly sort of helps kind of remove a lot of the stigma that's kind of attached to it.
It really does. There's points in my life where I've been able to talk about this stuff, whether it's with a professional like my therapist, or whether it's just talking like to you, Mike. When you and I sit down and I chat, it's like you got this. I feel like I've got this big balloon inside, and it's like every time you get a chance to openly talk and put yourself out there and discuss the things that you're dealing with, or the things that you're wrestling with, like every time you get to do that, it's just like you're letting a little bit of air out every time,
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of people that there's still stigma, not necessarily bounded to the, veterans, but just mental health in general, people going and, talking to people. And it's useful to talk to friends about it, but it's not, the circumstances that's going to come up are very rare in a conversation. If there's multiple people, you're not going to have that deep conversation. I think that's what like counseling is useful for people, is that you're basically like outsourcing, those type of conversations that you'd have with a friend, except it's an hour long and it's intense, focused just on you. Because that's not going to come up, at a bar.
Right.
Right.
And processing it that's to me, that's almost the biggest thing. That's the biggest part of it is processing and getting to know how you're going to get to that other side of the tunnel.
Yeah.
You can see the light. Like you can see where you can eventually have a life that doesn't surround yourself with depression and anxiety and these maybe thoughts of inadequacy, or maybe thoughts of insecurities, but then to process it and to realize that, you do have, you're building on your self-worth. You're building on you're like attacking it. You're being proactive about it. You're not just saying like, oh, this is it, this is permanent or whatever. You're saying like, well, this is it right now, but I'm taking a step every week. Absolutely.
To kind of feel better about it.
And it's, and it's funny talking to Mike, he was like, it's, you can't attack it all at one time. It's little steps. Mm-hmm. And you just, whether it's your physical, your mental health, you strive to do something each day and try to put yourself in a better position. And little bit at, over time, you take enough chunks out of that boulder and it'll turn into a pile of rocks.
And you're building momentum too. It's like making checklists, like when you're doing like your checklist for the day or whatever. You got to give yourself some easy ones, like brush your teeth.
You want to cross some stuff off.
Yeah, like, ooh, I'm on a roll.
So you were talking about small goals. I feel like I always talk about small goals and little ways that you can attack big issues, right? In that same bio that you wrote and Mike forwarded to me, you mentioned depression. How do you personally kind of pick away at depression?
I think for me, one of the biggest things that's helpful is getting out of your comfort zone when you're battling those bouts of depression, because there's a lot of times where, and I hate it because I think to myself, all the years that have gone by and all the friends I've had and family and different events that come up and things where you were supposed to be somewhere at a certain time, but I chose not to go, or I chose not to be around those people because I just wanted to hunker down. I just wanted to be myself. And now I find myself at a point where, especially just in the last 3 months with this therapy I'm going through now, and I'm trying to be cognizant about not letting myself get into that comfort. Get out of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. Go be out there. Go mix it up with people. And I'm a chatty Cathy. Like I can talk. I can talk for days. And I'm kind of a social butterfly. Like we all go downtown and go hang out at F Street or Pioneer. Like there's a good chance I'm going to run into 5 or 10 people and chop it up with them. But it's getting out of that comfort zone and not letting yourself wallow in whatever it is you're feeling, and really striving to do something for yourself, or do something to not let yourself, get wrapped up in those feelings and emotions. That's to me, it's so important.
Mm-hmm. Get out of your head.
I think that's a big part of counseling too, is that you're kind of like helping to identify your own bullshit, basically. like, wait a minute, I said that I wasn't going to hunker down, but now I'm just deciding to hunker down again. Like, maybe today I'm going to just go and see my friends or whatever.
Right. Yeah, and I think, I think all three of us can speak to this, and I think we all have our own things that, we can look forward to, during these bouts of winter when it gets, bone crushing cold, and it's just like, for me, that's my avenue for helping out and doing volunteer acts. I know this, not to be critical of myself, but I actually, like, once a month I make time to go walk through the museum. I love the art community that we have here, and supporting my friends that are local artists, and go seeing like Joe Kanishiro's works that are hanging up in Sub-Zero right now, and like going out and participating in things like First Friday, and then God help us when we get to Ferrande and, running to the reindeer and the ceremonial start. And there's like, it's so funny because I had a lot of friends come up here and visit even in the winter and not just the summer. And it's like, the first thing I always hear from people are like, oh my God, you guys drink so much, or everything's rolled around alcohol. And I don't really like to categorize it or paint that picture. I just think of it as like, yeah, there is a fair amount of stuff that plays into that scene, but also it's an avenue for people to get out of their homes and to be social, and to,
for sure,
get those serotonin levels picked up because you're happy and you're out and you're with your friends and you're doing things. A lot of people ski and snowboard and snow machine and all that. And I don't do a whole lot of that, but there is plenty of things. I think our community has been very open and active in trying to make sure that there are things for people to do so they don't feel like they're stuck.
Yeah.
I feel like we could all probably sit here and talk for another hour.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So to wrap this up, another thing that I took from your bio is where you say, I want it to be known that it's in my very core to help and take care of people. Why do you feel it's important for people to know that about you?
I think...
Are you afraid that people will think otherwise unless you tell them? Or is it something else?
No, I think that's, I don't, and it's nothing that I want, that bio was just kind of, I wanted you to have a kind of understanding of, where my background is and how I feel about things. And it doesn't like...
And I guess to clarify, the reason I ask that is because I have similar sentiments that I say because I can often come off kind of brash or kind of like an asshole.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you come off like that, but
No,
this is
no.
my interpretation of this was personal. I'm like, oh, I wonder if he thinks or if he tries to make that known because of, X.
Yeah, I think that plays. I think a big portion of it is what my professional career has been, my career choices, and the things that I've experienced, and the things I've been a part of, and the things that I've endured. But I think the other thing is like, I want my family and friends to know that no matter what the situation is, they can come to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like I'm always going to have the right answers. It's not like I'm always going to know, the right thing to say or the right thing to do. But I'm going to put as much effort as I can into helping them get through whatever situation they're going through, and in the hopes that, not to get like, I'm not looking for the attaboy on me. I'm hoping that they get through the situation a little better than what I did or how I went through it. And if the takeaway is they feel just a little bit better, or maybe they're able to process something a little better, it makes me feel good, and it makes me feel like there's, a good reason, or there's a purpose. I'm here.
Mm-hmm. As you've mentioned earlier, you've been in therapy for about 3 months now, and you have made these incredible improvements. If somebody's listening right now that is going through something similar to what you had gone through, what would you say to them?
I think the first thing I would always recommend to someone is, if you're not actively getting help, seek help. And there's so many different avenues of approach. I look at whether if you're in the military or if you're a veteran, the VA has got amazing programs out there. And I think it's important that you take the time and try to figure out whether you're just doing baseline interviews with multiple therapists, but get with someone that you're going to feel comfortable, giving that out to. The other thing is, for civilians, if you're feeling you're having problems, you're having issues, I'm trying to remember, I think one of the biggest, oh man, I remember I had a brief stint with the Alaska State Ombudsman Office, and the Ombudsman Office has got, they're a wealth of knowledge. There's so many different things. There's so many different programs that they're aware of, and they can turn people, or direct people to, the right institutes or the right personnel to help them out. And I wish I could speak, more clearer on that, but I think about people like first responders, like cops and firefighters, and granted they all have, from what I understand, pretty good, benefit package, but I hope, for our first responders out there and our EMS personnel, I hope they get help. I hope they seek out people that are going to help them process the catastrophes that they've been a part of, and really just work on, like I said, taking those baby steps, trying to chip at that boulder one chip at a time, and get to a point where, you feel a little more comfortable in your skin, and you're not carrying such a big load,
Well, this has been great, John. Thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Oh, thank you. I really love this. I love your show. I've been listening to it for a long time. In fact, before we go, I got to tell you, we hit this, I was fishing with Ryan, and we hit this like magic spot where all of a sudden I had like my LTE came on with my Verizon phone. I had like 2 bars, and I knew I could download something, and we just a real short window. and I downloaded the Mike Dempsey episode while we were out there, and then like we Bluetoothed it through Rhino's stereo, and we listened to the whole thing while we were out there fishing, and Ryan was cracking up the whole time. Like we were dying laughing, and
Oh, that's great.
yeah. So like I appreciate like the things you do and the people you talk to, and you know, Joker the bail bondsman, and Roger, and I mean, I'm just, and of course Mike D, and like just you're doing a great thing here, and I appreciate you letting me come in and be a part of this.
Thank you so much, man. That means a lot.
Thanks, Johnny.
Bet, Michael.
For more information about how you can support local grassroots journalism, go to www.patreon.com/Crude Magazine. Crude Conversations is written, hosted, and produced by me, Cody Liska, for Crude Magazine. Music was produced by Alcoda Beats.